like to invite Emrys Smith up to the stage. The man, the podcaster, a new friend who I am happy to know, and soon to be my dungeon master.
I only have 30 minutes left.
Emrys Smith.
It's kind of tough to follow poetry with prose. I'm glad I have a little Charles Dickens in me.
Yes! Nailed it!
Yes! Actually, I'm really resisting with every fiber of my being not being funny. I have a short story I wrote in 2006. I present it to you unread and unedited since then, in the hopes that it will reveal something more about my inner self than vigorous sexual pantomime and masturbation jokes. It is, for some reason, entitled The Adventures of Brunhilde, Mistress of the Dark, Episode 1, Egg Salad. All right. Short story time. Ceramic sounds sharply the passage of a patron's coffee. Each impact of stained stainless steel flatware against cheap chip plates tallies a fleeting satisfaction. Sounds war to distinguish themselves from the din. Anonymous bodies order and devour, pay and leave, atmospheric chaos their only legacy. Disengaged, one place seems unaffected, a pool of standing water amidst the consumer's cacophony. Brunhilde does not notice the bustle. A smeary glass sits unattended on the table in front of her. A lemon rind peers forlornly from the bottom of the tepid water, its support of ice long since melted away. Nor does Brunhilde notice the jaundiced patina of sticky grease and a dirty cleaning solution clinging to the tabletop. Instead, with deep focus, Brunhilde is tuned only to an annoying piece of vinyl, poking from the frayed seat cushion through her fishnet stockings and into her right thigh, between her knee and the trailing edge of her black corduroy skirt. The long, decoratively painted nail of her left hand finds the irritated region and scratches at it unenthusiastically. Brunhilde is transfixed, not by any material element of the situation, but instead by the fact that she could have moved when she first noticed the bothersome sliver, but did not. The cycle of her thoughts returns to the question of not only why hasn't she moved, but why she came to the greasy diner in the first place. There is no answer, but since she is here, she might as well be comfortable. But if she is going to move, why doesn't she simply leave? She stays at this point only because she has already spent so much time here that she hopes to get something out of it. Those chances become increasingly remote the longer she stays, and so it goes. At some point, for some reason, her circular reasoning is interrupted by a new sensation imposing itself upon her awareness. An old man has been looking for a place to sit with anyone in the diner who would make eye contact with him. At this moment, it was his smell that broke Brunhilde's reverie, bringing the itchy piece of vinyl annoyingly back into her awareness. The twin irritations surprised her into momentarily flashing her carefully shadowed and bespectacled gaze directly at his face and finding, to her chagrin, the glance returned. His face conveys the depths of his need, hers the depth of her apathy. The moment passes in silence with the old man running his eyes over her. His observational motivation prevails over any lingering lustful drive. Dark hair briefly frames Brunhilde's oval features, and every element of her dress, from discreet makeup to spotless shoes, betrays a calculated distance. She pushes the world away from her with merely her presence. Brunhilde is accustomed to such examinations and returns the old man looks with indifference, and finds him to be seemingly barely able to maintain the foundations of hygiene, let alone any manner of social more. Once again their eyes meet. "What are you doing here?" the old man asks, taking a seat across from her. Brunhilde blinks. Excuse me? Aren't you going to eat anything? He acknowledges her empty glass and lack of dishes. Brunhilde looks suddenly at her glass, sitting forgotten in a pool of condensation. Apparently not, she confesses. The old man's sparsely whiskered face expresses mysterious sympathy. "So, why are you here?" he quietly repeats. Brunhilde sighs. "What's it to you? What do you want anyway?" Her brusqueness blends seamlessly into her unwelcoming veneer. "All I want is a sandwich." The old man's tone is regretful. "What kind?" Surprised, he furrows his brow for a moment in thought. Egg salad would be fine. Brunhilde's nose wrinkles in vague disgust as she turns to grab the attention of the waitress for the first time since receiving her glass of water. The waitress is young for an old woman, her feet flat with exhaustion in cheap tennis shoes the color of sackcloth steeped in boiled oil. Silently, she draws a pencil from the stringy knot of her sandy brown hair. Once perhaps she was beautiful, perhaps come the end of her shift she will be again, but for now she is harried, wrapped in dollars and cents. She continues to bridge the gap between the diner and its customers. What'll it be? The transaction is conducted in as near to silence as humanly possible. They have nothing to say to each other, and the food is slow to arrive. The old man and the young woman sit across from each other in sharp contrast. The dark gray and pastel yellow of Brunhilde's conservatively flattering blouse seems almost a shock of bright color against the monochrome sepia tones of the old man's attire. Reflected in the chrome piping of the tabletop trim, the two figures paint an incongruous streak of color, brilliant in direct proportion to their grim mutual silence. The waitress's return to the table portends the delivery of the overdue meal. Wearily, she sets the food before them with the bill carefully upside down in its black plastic cradle. Brunhilde's analysis of the platter yields little in the way of satisfaction. The sandwich is a stale, crumbling mass of greasy remains. The blended ovum of its avian ancestry is barely distinguishable from its translucent mayonnaise suspension. This pathetic spectacle is lovingly and ironically garnished with a pickle spear, its desiccated, stained substance managing to look robust in comparison to its companion. Brunhilde's expertly manicured veneer is briefly betrayed by her disgust. $5.46, you should be ashamed of yourself. Oh, I am, dear, the waitress replies. Chagrined, Brunhilde consults the contents of her bag. After a moment's consideration, she produces and presents the amount of $6.55. Blankly, the woman considers the change in her hand before consigning it to the pocket of her smock, offering a weary goodbye and continuing to the next raucous table. In her absence, Brunhilde becomes aware of the old man once again. With the grim vigor of desperation, the shabby gentleman grips his meal. Disappearing into his grimy hands, the sandwich could easily be some manner of shellfish in the grip of a hungry predator. In a matter of moments, all that remains are a few yellow crumbs on the man's grizzled face and the startlingly solitary pickle, naked in a pool of green brine. Still muffled with food, the man gestures vaguely at his plate. Feel free, don't like pickles. Brunhilde takes the destitute man's sole worldly possession between thumb and forefinger and bisects it between her teeth. The pickle skin is soft and turns to mush in Brunhilde's mouth, flooding it with bitterness. Turning to her long neglected beverage, she discovers that at some point she had drained it of its contents. The lemon rind, a sodden lidded eye lying sated at the bottom of the glass. The old man has left at this point, leaving only the unplaceable musky odor which presaged his arrival. Alone, Brunhilde finally succumbs to her environment. The consumerist din presses in on her like a storm cloud. Her mouth is full of salt and bitterness and anticlimax. Finally, pressing into her thigh through her fishnet stockings is a sliver of frayed vinyl. Brunhilde takes to her feet in an uncharacteristic flurry of activity. Grabbing her bag, she sweeps through the crowded diner, leaving a vacuum in her wake. Upon breaching the door, Brunhilde is buffeted by the unusually warm autumn day. In the distance, obscured by a swirl of multi-hued leaves, the clock tower of the nearby college campus begins to call her name. Breathless and alone, she clasps her bag to her side and begins to run.